everyone, Jess with Emotional Fire Academy, here today to talk about highly sensitive person coping strategies, 10 quick tips you can start using today to deal with being a highly sensitive person if you're struggling with that. My name is Jess. I am your driver operator on this journey. I'm a former firefighter and an emotion coach, and I help highly sensitive people evolve into the next version of themselves. So subscribe to my channel if you want to see new videos every week about what it's like to be a highly sensitive person and awesome tools to help you manage your sensitivity. So I refer back to the emotional fire triangle. This is kind of the basis of my philosophy of being a highly sensitive person and understanding how and where emotion happens. So emotion obviously is the fire in the middle. When we're having issues with emotion or sensitivity, it's often the combination of three things: our past conditioning, our physiology, so what's happening in our body, and then the language we're using with ourselves and with other people. And so I'm going to give you some tips from each side of the triangle today so that you can start managing your sensitivity if you are struggling with it or blaming it for a lot of your issues, which is definitely how I felt. All of these tips, by the way, are things I have tested myself and are still using, and so they come recommended by me 100%. And again, my background is as an EMT and firefighter, so take everything I tell you today with a grain of salt, feel it out to feel if it's true, and let me know what you think. So let's start with the language element. So accepting that being a highly sensitive person around the year 2020, which is when I'm filming this, is difficult. The world, Western society, when I say the world, Western society is definitely not set up to accept highly sensitive people. Big emotions, showing them in public is frowned upon. So a lot of people don't know how to handle emotional people. A lot of people don't know how to handle sensitive people. So there's just kind of, right now, not enough education or information for the majority to accept the 20% of us that are highly sensitive. It's kind of like being gay when you were in the 50s. The world culturally just wasn't ready for and set up to support those cultural nuances. And so I think it's the same thing with being highly sensitive. I just don't think culture, society is there yet to appreciate us and to see how awesome we are. Because as highly sensitive people, we have a lot to offer. We also need greater support. And so, just realizing that, okay, it's not me, it's them. I was born a little bit too early. The world's kind of catching up with sensitivity and the value of being a highly sensitive person. Because I do think this is the evolution of humans. I think we're all going to get more sensitive over time. That's where we're going. Just like technology, right? Our cell phones get more sensitive, they get more perceptive, they can hear and see better, they take better pictures, they better connect to the internet. We are the human technology. We are sensing these subtleties that 80% of the population isn't. And so this is kind of like the next step for humanity, and we're already there. And so it's kind of hard being the first ones out the door, obviously. So, reframing it like that is a huge, recognizing that was a huge thing for me. And just kind of, coming to terms with that and being like, okay, this is just how it is, and I accept that, and not struggling so much in it and needing the world to conform to me. The label, second thing. So when we use language, we create essentially. Something doesn't exist until there is a word for it. And so when a word comes into existence for something, it starts to accumulate meaning, right? People start to associate it either positively or negatively. And so the label of highly sensitive person, because it's not totally understood by, the majority, and there's not a lot of education about it, it's kind of, to me, has a negative connotation. It might have a totally positive connotation for you, and if it does, I totally recommend continuing to use that label on yourself. However, if you find yourself, kind of recognizing that, okay, I'm going to play around with this label and maybe I will come up with a different term for my sensitivity. What you do when you do that is you create the new boundaries, right? The new terms. When you make a new word, you essentially get to create from scratch. So you can then create it for whatever you want. The term I came up for myself is super sensor. I think this is what a healthy, highly sensitive person is. They are a super sensor. And so that to me, I had never heard that term. And so using that, that label, playing around with the label actually helps you with how you react to your sensitivity. It's actually changing your narrative. It's changing your story. And I know this might sound really subtle, but these tiny little shifts can actually have huge differences. When you kind of detach from a label, you can then have space to become something more than you were, right? So yeah, play around with the label. Come up with what label would you come up with instead of HSP? What label would you come up with for yourself to describe your skills and abilities and your personality trait of sensitivity? Number 3. All right, learning. So learning how to use language better is also a great coping strategy for highly sensitive people. I prided myself on my communication skills. I used to have to deal with people in emergencies. I had to be very direct. But it wasn't until I actually took some communication skills classes that I realized that I had a lot to learn. And the better you can manipulate language, the better you can express what you're saying and realize how it is coming off to somebody else, the better your relationships are going to get. First of all, right? The better you're relating to other people. And then the better that you're also going to relate to yourself, because you're going to recognize, like, okay, if I say something in this tone of voice and I don't do this, I'm going to have this result. You start to recognize the importance of language, not only to yourself, but between you and someone else, and be aware of bigger patterns of communication that are happening in your relationships. And I think this is huge for highly sensitive people, because our relationships are very important to us, right? We're super hyper vigilant to what's happening in our relationships. And so doing that, taking some core communication skills, learning about it, even just reading a couple articles about how to be a better communicator, hugely helpful for relating to ourselves and others for highly sensitive people. To pick up my pace here. All right, so let's get to the physiology side. Some good coping strategies for highly sensitive people to help manage that emotional fire in the middle, the reactivity, the sensitivity. Eat regularly. I don't care whether you have pre-diabetic tendencies or not. The world is a rosier place after you've had a meal. I guarantee you. 95% of the time when I'm having an issue with someone, I'm like, hey, let's go grab something to eat and talk about it, as we're eating or after the meal. It will resolve on its own. Eating, I think, eating regularly for highly sensitive people, super, super, super critical. As trendy as it is to skip meals and do intermittent fasting and all that stuff, I've had the most success with this thing right here, eating regularly. I eat every 2 to 3 hours. I have a snack or a meal, and that is massive. That is massive for emotional control, for resilience, for being able to tolerate things. Yeah, so we'll leave that there. Cutting out sugar. Cutting out sugar, again, huge. I think highly sensitive people, super sensitive to changes in your body, in your blood sugar, in the things that you take into your body, and processed sugar, processed carbs. When I cut those out, I really committed to cutting those out of my diet. Nothing. I'll eat fruit. I will eat a piece of dark chocolate. There's also these great things called coconut rolls that are really low sugar and they're natural. They have them, I've seen them in grocery stores. They are also, if you need that little hit of sweetness after a meal or something, these are great, like lower sugar alternatives, but cutting out, breads, any type of processed sugar, and flour, whew, game changing. Game changing as far as being more resilient. Holy cow. I can actually time, if I do break down and have a piece of cake or something, I can time it. 45 minutes later, I will turn into a raging monster. So I will typically induce a fight and be really upset about something, or just like kind of lose my mental control. It's that predictable because of the sugar. So cutting out sugar, that is a good coping strategy for highly sensitive people. Herbs. There's a lot of great herbs out there that can help with emotional control. And, herbs are non-habit forming. Obviously, if you're taking medication, be careful about trying herbs. And I'm not just talking about cannabis. I'm talking about, other things like St. John's wort. I haven't actually tried that, but I have heard interesting things about it. Two of the herbs that I consistently use are valerian root. That is excellent for a sleep. And it helps you just kind of sleep longer and more soundly. The same thing that I have had great success with is CBD oil. I used that for a very long period of time while I was learning how to emotionally control myself. Right before bedtime, I'd take a couple squirts of CBD, like high quality CBD oil. And that was great for my nervous system to just calm it down. It was a very, very subtle effect. But what I found is that it helped me stay asleep during the entire night, and I just felt calmer. I could definitely sense the calm in my body when I took the CBD. Obviously, it wasn't a cure-all, and neither is the valerian root, but herbs are a great way to support your body as a highly sensitive person. And again, on Amazon, if you go in and type in, herbs for emotional support, read the reviews, try it for a month or two, and that's a great way to just kind of get your body on board with your mind so that it can all kind of work together and support you instead of you having to fight against, what's happening in your body. All right, so moving on to conditioning. So this one, number 7, inner child work. I would have balked at this 10 years ago. I would have been like, inner child work? Pff, please, what does that even have to do with my sensitivity? It doesn't even make sense. It's too woo-woo. Doing inner child work, and I heard someone say this once, and I didn't believe it until I realized it to be true myself, is kind of mind-blowing. Because what happens as a highly sensitive person, because the world isn't ready for us, we actually experience what's kind of can be described as a fragmentation of self. Our inner child, our inner desires, and just this pure consciousness gets kind of split from the person that we think we're expected to be. We're told to shove down our emotions, not show them. We're told to be not so sensitive. And so this fragmentation of self happens. And so often as an adult, when we're having issues with emotionality, it's this part of ourselves, this inner child part, if you will, that's kind of acting out. And until we realize that and integrate those two parts, we will often continue to have issues. And I experienced this myself firsthand. I rejected the whole inner child work. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But finding a good practitioner to help you through some inner child work, a therapist, a hypnotherapist, this can all be done pretty easily. That's a game changer. Like when you recognize you do have this little rebellious part of yourself that likes to act up, you can manage it and you can better, bring this part some relief, some reparenting, and just calm down and acknowledge it and integrate it into yourself. And that's when that reintegration, you can then start to mature and grow from there. It's kind of like you become whole again, and then you move on from there and grow and mature as a whole person. That's what I experienced. Pretty game changing. as a highly sensitive person. And obviously, understanding yourself and where a lot of your triggers come from and why you feel the way you feel about certain things. So, number 8, clean your closet out. And this might not be immediately obvious, but really managing your conditioning, right? Your past conditioning, dealing with the skeletons in your closet, the emotional skeletons, is going to help you overall as a highly sensitive person. It is going to help you recognize what your triggers are, why you feel the way you feel about things, bringing you this level of inner peace that is necessary for you. Because if you have a lot of emotional baggage from your past that you haven't dealt with, it's going to keep bubbling up. It's going to keep getting re-triggered. It is going to keep, kind of rising in times and places when you don't want it to, because it's operating. It's kind of like all these systems operating on their own, and causing you this inner turmoil that's an additional layer that you don't need. And so the more you can clean out your emotional baggage, make peace with people, forgive people, that type of self-inner work is going to help you as a highly sensitive person immensely, because then where you had wounds, you're healing them and you're moving past them. Whereas if you don't know that, if you think you've kind of dealt with them, but it's still there, it's going to keep coming up to the surface. So that, I know that's a tall order and it's an ongoing life process sometimes. But the more of this you can do, really cleaning out all that old baggage and trauma and cleaning all that out is going to help you as a highly sensitive person to look forward and not get dragged back by your past. And number 9, rituals for self-care. A lot of our habits, our current conditioning is our collections of habits that we do on a daily basis. Developing some awesome self-care rituals is going to help you as a highly sensitive person. The more I adhere to my self-care rituals, the better I feel. I know instantly when I'm like, oh, I haven't done my self-care today, I am going to feel kind of shaky emotionally. So getting some good rituals. I suggest morning and evening rituals. For me, in the morning, I like to listen to a meditative soundtrack to kind of just get my brain in a relaxed state. In the evening, I like to take baths. I de-stress in the bathtub and I listen to Abraham Hicks. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so having these rituals where you do them consistently, you do them just for yourself. And the tip here is make it fun. If self-care feels like work to you, you're not going to want to do it. That's what I found. I didn't want to do it when it was like boring. And to me, that's how meditation felt. And so find something fun that you actually like to do, that you enjoy doing. Add an element of playfulness to your self-care and you'll want to do it even more. And that will help you stay consistent. And then number 10, change your strategy. So essentially, remember that managing your sensitivity is essentially like any other thing in your life that you're trying to manage, right? And so if you find yourself struggling, recognize that you just need a change of strategy. Strategy is how, a bigger picture, how we approach problems and the methods that we use to try and solve those problems, or the methods we use to try and move ahead and make progress. So if you change your strategy, you will change your outcome. And really all it takes when, learning how to deal with your high sensitivity is finding some new strategies. And one of the ways you can do that is get some coaching. I have used that as a highly sensitive person, and now I am a coach. So come work with me. I will help you to manage these 3 sides of your triangle. I will teach you some new strategies if it isn't working. And obviously you can also, look me up on YouTube, you can check out some of my other videos. I highly recommend the one on self-care versus damage control if you're thinking about, your rituals and how to turn damage control situations into self-care rituals. I'll put the link above. And yeah, so come work with me. Let me help you evolve into a super sensor if you feel like you're struggling as a highly sensitive person. Otherwise, I hope you found some value in this today, and thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment below, let me know what you thought and which one of these strategies you're going to try today and to help you move forward as a highly sensitive person. So check out my website, emotionalfireacademy.com, and I do have that program, Flammable to Fireproof, to help you evolve into the highly sensitive hotshot that I know you can be. Have a wonderful day. Bye.